Understanding how much your SMSF can borrow isn't just about the numbers. It's about knowing the real factors lenders use to assess your super fund. In this video, we unpack exactly what drives your SMSF's borrowing capacity, from regulatory limits to lender criteria, so you can make smarter property investment decisions. Let's dive in.
Hello and welcome. So, you're thinking about using your self-managed super fund to buy property. It's a huge step, and you've probably got one massive question on your mind. Just how much can your super fund actually borrow? You know, getting this number right is the bedrock of your entire strategy. And as we're about to see, it's about way more than just the balance in your fund. To make this all feel a bit more real, let's follow the journey of someone we'll call Sarah. She's an investor. She's got a goal to use her super fund to build a better future. But first, she had to get her head around this exact puzzle, figuring out her fund's true borrowing power. So why does this question matter so much? Simple. Your borrowing power literally sets the stage for your entire investment play. If you nail it, you could supercharge your retirement savings. But if you get it wrong, you could put them in real jeopardy. You see, when it's used smartly, borrowing is an incredibly powerful tool. It lets your fund get its hands on a major asset, like a property, that can kick off rental income and grow in value. It's a way to potentially fast-track your journey to a much more comfortable retirement. All right, first things first. We have to wrap our heads around two different sets of rules that control everything. First, there's what the law, the Australian Tax Office, allows, and then there's what the banks will actually lend you. And spoiler alert, those two things are very, very different. Okay, so let's get this straight from the get-go. The law allows for two completely different kinds of borrowing. On one hand, you've got short-term borrowing. That's just for liquidity, maybe to cover some expenses. It's tiny, up to 10% of your assets, and you have to pay it back in 90 days. That is not what we're talking about for buying property. We're in a whole different ballgame. And that ballgame is called a limited recourse borrowing arrangement, or LRBA for short. This is the special legal setup you need to buy an investment property in your super. Now, the most important part is that limited recourse bit. It means that if something goes terribly wrong, the lender can only take the property. They can't touch any of the other assets sitting in your super fund. It's a critical protection. And there's one other key ATO rule you need to know, and it's all about protecting your nest egg. It's called the in-house asset rule. Basically, it says that less than 5% of your fund's assets can be tied up in businesses or entities related to you. It's there to stop any conflicts of interest and make sure your fund is 100% focused on your retirement, not on propping up a side hustle. Okay, so the law doesn't actually set a dollar limit on how much you can borrow for a property. So who does? The lenders, the banks. They're the real gatekeepers. This was the next big hurdle for Sarah. She had to prove her fund was a safe bet. So let's pull back the curtain on their checklist. The very first number a lender is going to look at is something called the loan-to-value ratio, the LVR. Now, in the SMSF world, they'll typically only lend you about 70, maybe 80% of the property's value. That means the other 20 to 30%, the deposit, has to come straight out of your fund's existing cash. For Sarah, this was her first big reality check. But, and this is so important, don't for a second think it stops there. The LVR, that just gets you in the door. To actually get the loan approved, lenders do a full-on financial health check, a real deep dive into your entire SMSF. Their investigation really focuses on 4 key areas. They look at you, the trustee, they look at the fund's income, they look at what assets you already have, and crucially, how much cash you have on hand. Let's break down what they're actually looking for. This is a big one. Lenders look at the people behind the fund. Yeah, your personal credit score absolutely matters, because to them, it's a reflection of how disciplined you'll be as a trustee. They'll also pore over your fund's contribution history to see if it's steady. They'll analyze the rental income potential of the property you want to buy. And yeah, they'll even look at your age, because that affects how long you have to pay the loan back. And here's the kicker: liquidity. Lenders need to see a nice, healthy cash buffer sitting in your fund. We're talking enough cash to cover at least 3 to 6 months of loan repayments and other costs, just in case the property sits empty for a bit. For Sarah, this was a game changer. It meant she couldn't just throw every last dollar at the deposit. She had to keep a serious chunk of cash in reserve. So, now that we know how lenders decide how much you can borrow, it's time to ask the much, much more important question: how much should you borrow? Because this is where strategy and smart risk management really come into play. You have to remember the golden rule of superannuation. Every single decision you make has to pass the sole purpose test. The whole point of your fund, its only reason for being, is to provide for your retirement. Any strategy that puts that core mission at risk, no matter how tempting it looks, is just off the table. So what are these big risks we need to manage? Well, concentration is a huge one. Putting all of your retirement eggs into one single property basket. Then you've got cash flow risk. What happens if you can't find a tenant for a few months? And of course, the big one everyone's talking about, interest rate risk. Could your fund still make the repayments if rates were to jump up?
This is the question you absolutely have to ask yourself. Before you even think about signing any loan papers, you have to stress test your plan. Seriously, run the numbers. What if rent drops 20%? What if rates go up 2 or 3%? A little bit of prudent planning right now can save you a world of hurt down the road.
And here is a fantastic piece of wisdom from seasoned investors. Never, ever borrow your absolute maximum. Intentionally borrowing 10 to 15% less than what the bank is offering, that's not leaving money on the table. That's building a vital safety buffer that will help you sleep at night for the long term.
So, let's tie this all together. Your SMSF's borrowing capacity, it isn't some random number plucked out of the air. It's a living, breathing figure that truly reflects the financial health of your fund, the quality of your assets, your own personal discipline, and, most importantly, the strength of your strategic plan.
So the real question to leave you with isn't, how much can I borrow? It's, how can I use borrowing strategically to build the exact retirement I've always envisioned? Answering that, well, that's the real key to success. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.